Hi, glad you're back with me. This is an original story from Hidden Revenge Family, and it took a turn you truly didn't see coming. Let's get into it.
I walked into my sister's engagement party wearing my old service dress jacket because it was the only thing in my closet that still fit me and still meant something. 12 years in Army logistics, 2 deployments, a clean record, a stack of commendations, and one civilian job offer that had vanished the week before. The Sterling family's estate sat on a hill like it had its own zip code. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet playing songs no one was listening to. People laughed too loudly and hugged too long. Money always makes people act like they're in a commercial. Becca spotted me before I reached the bar. My little sister, perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect life funded by someone else's credit limit. Cassidy, she called out, waving like she'd just spotted a lost tourist. "You made it." She kissed my cheek. Her perfume was expensive and aggressive. I handed her a small gift bag. "Congratulations." She barely glanced at it before turning to the crowd around her. "Everyone, this is my sister Cassidy." A few polite smiles turned toward me. Becca lifted her champagne flute. She just got out of the army, and now she tilted her head pretending to search for the right word. In between opportunities, someone chuckled. Another person nodded like they understood something tragic. Becca continued, "She's staying with our parents right now. Bless her heart. Civilian life is hard when you don't really have transferable skills." Transferable skills. I had managed supply chains worth millions of dollars. I had kept battalions operational in places where Amazon didn't deliver. But sure, no skills. A tall man stepped forward. Julian Sterling, the groom, tailored suit, teeth that cost more than my first car. He shook my hand like he was testing the firmness of a mattress. "So you're the military sister," he said. "Must be nice to finally relax." "Relax," I smiled. "I'm looking for work." Julian laughed. "Well, if you ever need something simple, I'm sure we can find a spot for you. Our cleaning staff is always rotating." He said it like a joke. His eyes said it wasn't. Becca laughed louder than anyone. I excused myself and headed toward the bar. My resume folder was in my handbag. Printed copies, reference letters, interview notes. Old school, because some hiring managers still liked paper. I ordered a soda water and stared at the crowd. My parents were across the room, blending in with the decor. My father, Wallace, in a stiff suit. My mother, Karen, smiling like she was hosting a charity gala instead of watching one daughter humiliate the other. Becca reappeared at my side with 2 glasses of red wine. "I got you something," she said, handing me one. "I didn't ask for." She bumped her glass into mine. The red wine sloshed out, directly onto my handbag. Cold liquid soaked through the leather. I opened the bag fast, papers stained. Ink bleeding, reference letters now pink. My resume looked like a crime scene. Becca gasped. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Her lips curled just slightly, not enough for anyone else to see. Enough for me. I pulled out the folder. Drips hit the marble floor. Becca leaned in and whispered, "Well, it's not like you have a career to worry about, right?" I stared at her, not shocked, not surprised, just taking the measurement of how far she was willing to go in front of an audience. A few guests noticed. The string quartet kept playing. Someone handed me a napkin. I wiped nothing. I walked toward my parents. My mother saw the wine stains first. "Cassidy, honey, it's just a bag." My father glanced at Becca, then at Julian, then back at me. He chose his words carefully like a man negotiating a ceasefire. "Let's not make a scene," he said. "It's an important night for your sister." I looked at my ruined paperwork, then at their faces. No one asked if I was okay. No one asked what those documents meant to me. No one apologized on her behalf. "Just don't make a scene." I closed the folder and slid it back into the bag. Wet paper squished under my fingers. I turned back toward the crowd. Julian was already laughing with his friends. Becca was back in the center, glowing under the chandelier, raising her glass again. I stood at the edge of the room like a background extra in my own family. And that's when a thought hit me, calm and sharp. They think I'm finished. Not struggling, not rebuilding, finished. I took a slow breath, straightened my jacket, and walked toward the exit. Behind me, someone called out, "Hey, Army girl, don't forget your drink." I didn't turn around. Outside, the night air was cool, quiet. No violins, no laughter, no perfume. Just me, a stained bag, and a sister who had decided my failure made her look better. I stood there for a moment staring back at the mansion's bright windows, and I wondered how many people listening right now have ever walked into a room where everyone decided who you were before you opened your mouth. Have you ever been treated like the disposable one in your own family, while someone else wore the spotlight that used to belong to both of you? Because if you have, then you know exactly what it feels like to walk away with your head high, and a plan forming that no one sees coming. I drove back to my parents' house with the stained handbag on the passenger seat. The smell of wine thickened the car, and my jaw locked so tight my teeth hurt. The house was quiet when I walked in. Same beige walls, same framed family photos, Becca in every picture center position, me in uniform, usually cropped at the edge like an afterthought. I went straight to the kitchen sink. I pulled out the ruined documents and laid them flat to dry. Resume, cover letters, interview notes, 5 companies, 5 rejection emails, all from the last 2 weeks. I opened my laptop and reread them. After careful consideration, while your background is impressive, we've decided to move forward with other candidates. At first, I'd blamed the economy or my transition from military to civilian life. Or maybe I was rusty at interviews. That was the story I'd been telling myself to sleep at night. But now, after watching Becca smile while destroying my only tangible shot forward, the pattern felt different. Too clean, too consistent. The next morning I started calling. Company 1, polite HR assistant. Company 2, voicemail. Company 3, a recruiter who sounded uncomfortable the moment I introduced myself. Hi, this is Cassidy Hayes. I interviewed last week for the operations role. I wanted to ask if you could share any feedback on why I wasn't selected. Silence, then a careful inhale. I probably shouldn't say this, she said, but someone called us. A family member, said you'd been discharged for psychological instability, PTSD-related incidents, that you were unpredictable. My hand froze on the phone. That's not true, I said. I assumed she replied quietly. But we have a policy. If a close relative raises a concern like that, we flag it as a risk factor. I thanked her. Hung up, called the next company. Same story, different voice, same outcome. By noon, I had 5 confirmations. Someone, a family member, a concerned relative, warning them about my mental health, painting me as a liability. There was only one person in my family who benefited from me being dependent. Becca. I walked to my parents' living room. My mother was folding laundry. My father was reading the newspaper like nothing in the world ever changed. Did Becca call companies I applied to? I asked. My mother's hands stopped moving. My father folded his paper slowly. Too slowly. She was just trying to help, my mother said. By telling them I'm unstable, I asked. My father cleared his throat. She said it would be hard for you to adjust. She didn't want you overwhelmed. I laughed once. No humor, just disbelief. She told them I'm mentally unfit to work. Do you understand what that does to my record? To my future, my mother looked away. She was worried about you. I stepped closer. No, she was worried I'd get a job and stop being useful. My father stood up. Watch your tone. I stared at him. You watched her pour wine on my resume and told me not to make a scene. So let's not pretend tone matters in this house. No one answered. The truth sat between us, heavy and undeniable. Becca wanted me home, broke, available, someone to clean, someone to cook, someone to watch her dog when she traveled with Julian, someone who made her look generous when she posted online about supporting my struggling veteran sister. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. Becca. Hey, Cass, she said brightly. Just checking in. How's the job hunt? I let the silence stretch. Oh, she added. By the way, Mom said you're still staying there. That's great. Actually, Julian and I were talking. When we get married, we'll need someone responsible to help with the house. You could stay with us. Free room, free food. You'd just help out a little. Help out a little. I pictured myself in a maid's uniform carrying trays past her influencer brunch table. I'll think about it, I said. Perfect, she replied. I knew you'd come around. She hung up before I could answer. That night, I sat on my childhood bed and opened my laptop again. I searched my name online. Clean, no scandals, no incidents. 12 years of service, honorably discharged, leadership awards. None of that mattered if my own family was rewriting the narrative behind my back. I drafted an email to every company explaining the situation. I deleted it. It would look defensive, desperate, risky. I needed facts, proof. A way to corner this cleanly. So I did what I'd always done in the army when something didn't add up. I started collecting information, call logs, email timestamps, dates of rejection, times Becca had just been checking in, patterns. And the more I looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't impulse cruelty, it was planned, executed, strategic. My little sister hadn't just embarrassed me at a party. She had taken control of my professional future. And she'd done it with a smile, a phone, and a story about a broken veteran who needed saving. I closed my laptop and leaned back against the wall. For the first time since leaving the service, I felt something familiar settle in. Not anger, focus. Mission parameters were forming, targets were identifiable, and I had nothing left to lose by playing along for now. So I sent Becca a text. About helping at your place after the wedding. Let's talk details soon. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Then yay, so proud of you, sis. I turned off the phone and placed it face down on the bed. In this family, silence was obedience. And for the moment, I could be very obedient. I woke up the next morning and made breakfast for my parents like nothing had happened. Eggs, toast, coffee, routine, predictable, safe. My mother smiled like everything was normal. My father read his paper again. No one mentioned the phone calls. No one mentioned the lies. We all played our assigned roles. In this house, silence was not peace. It was policy. I washed the dishes, dried my hands, checked my phone, 1 missed call, unknown number. I listened to the voicemail. Captain Hayes, this is General Harrison, retired. Please return my call when you're able. I hadn't heard that voice in years. Deep, steady, the kind of voice that made rooms straighten their posture. I stepped outside to the back porch and called him back. Sir, this is Cassidy Hayes. Cassidy, he said. I heard you're back in Seattle. Yes, sir, I'm adjusting. Good. I'll get to the point. Something came across my desk that belongs in your hands, not in the hands of your family. My grip tightened on the phone. Do you remember your grandfather, Silas Hayes? Barely, I said. He died when I was a kid. Yes. He also happened to be one of the original founders of Vanguard Logistics. I blinked. Vanguard Logistics, a national freight and transport corporation. I'd studied their supply chain model in officer training. Efficient, aggressive, profitable. I don't understand, I said. Silas left shares of Vanguard in a trust. Your parents were appointed temporary guardians because you were a minor. The trust stipulated the controlling shares would transfer to you upon honorable discharge from service. I stared at the yard, my father's prized rose bushes, my mother's bird feeder. Everything suddenly looked like a stage set. Sir, my parents told me Grandpa left nothing. They said the company bought out his shares. Your parents lied. Harrison said simply, the shares were never sold. The trust still exists, and legally those shares are yours. I felt no cinematic shock, no gasping moment, just a quiet recalibration in my brain. How many shares, I asked. Enough to hold controlling interest. 51%. Controlling interest. That meant ownership, direction, authority. That meant Vanguard Logistics answered to me, Harrison continued. I didn't know if you were aware, but I recently learned certain parties are attempting to acquire Vanguard through a merger. One of them is Sterling Capital, Julian's company, the same Julian who had offered me a cleaning job, the same Julian whose family now treated me like leftover furniture. I leaned against the porch railing. Why tell me this now, I asked. Because your grandfather respected service. He designed the trust so no one could touch it until you finished your duty. You've done that. The company is yours. What you choose to do with it is your call. But I won't watch someone steal what he built while you're kept in the dark. A car passed on the street. Somewhere a dog barked. Life continued, unaware that my position in it had just shifted. What do I need to do, I asked. I'll send you contact information for the trust's legal counsel. They've been waiting years for your signature. We ended the call. I stayed on the porch for a long moment, no dramatic music, no tears. Just a simple fact settling into place. I wasn't broke, I wasn't dependent, I wasn't powerless, I was uninformed by design. I walked back into the house. My mother was wiping the counter. My father was still reading the newspaper. I looked at them differently now, not as parents, as people who had managed my life like a file in a locked cabinet. They hadn't just watched Becca sabotage me. They had hidden a corporation from me. I poured myself another cup of coffee and sat at the table, No accusations, no confrontation. Not yet. I needed clarity before action, so I asked casually, "Hey." Random question. Did Grandpa Silas own part of Vanguard Logistics? My mother froze mid-wipe. My father lowered the newspaper slowly. "That's ancient history," he said. "I was just curious," I replied. I read an article about Vanguard's growth. It mentioned one of the founders was Silas Hayes. My mother smiled too quickly. "He sold his shares long ago. There was nothing left." I nodded. Got it. Lie confirmed. Direct. Calm. Rehearsed. I finished my coffee, stood up, washed my cup, played the role of obedient daughter who asked a harmless question. In the afternoon, I took my laptop to the public library, neutral ground, free Wi-Fi, no family eyes. I emailed the law firm Harrison had sent. Within 20 minutes, I got a reply. "Ms. Hayes, we've been waiting for your contact. The trust is intact. Your grandfather's conditions have been satisfied. You are the majority shareholder of Vanguard Logistics. We can proceed with identity verification and transfer of control at your convenience." I read the message twice, then a third time. I closed the laptop and leaned back in the chair. My parents had built their lives on a house they were struggling to keep. Becca had built hers on appearances and proximity to wealth. Julian was building his on acquisitions and debt-fueled expansion. And under all of it sat a company quietly waiting for me to show up. I walked out of the library into the gray Seattle afternoon. People hurried past me carrying coffee cups, backpacks, briefcases. Everyone headed somewhere important. For the first time since leaving the Army, I didn't feel like I was chasing stability. Stability had been sitting in a trust fund, collecting dividends, while my family decided I was a burden. My phone buzzed. "Becca, hey sis, Julian and I just booked a trip to Cabo after the wedding. You'll love staying at the house while we're gone. We'll talk details soon." I smiled slightly. She thought she had me cornered. She thought I was one missed paycheck away from obedience. She thought the story was already written. I typed back. "Sounds good. Let me know when you want me to come by and help." Then I slipped the phone into my pocket and kept walking. No rush, no drama, just a quiet shift in power that no one in my family had noticed yet. And I intended to keep it that way for a little longer. I leaned fully into the role they'd written for me. 2 days later, I stood in front of a gated mansion on the north side of the city, holding a duffel bag and my stained handbag. Becca had kindly arranged for me to move in early to get settled before the wedding. The house was rented, not owned. New money style. Too much glass, too many white surfaces. Nothing built to last. Becca opened the door in silk pajamas at noon. "There she is," she sang, my favorite live-in support system. She hugged me like we were best friends. Her nails dug into my back just enough to remind me who she thought was in charge. She gave me the tour. Guest room in the basement, tiny window, no lock on the door. "The maid comes twice a week," she said. But between us, I fired the last one. She had attitude. "So you'll just handle day-to-day. Simple stuff." I nodded. Calm face, neutral tone. No reaction, no resistance. Gray rock. If she wanted obedience, I could look obedient. By evening, Becca was filming a skincare video in the living room. Ring light, phone tripod. Fake laugh, fake sincerity. I cleaned the kitchen quietly like background noise. After she went to bed, I unpacked. Not clothes, equipment, small motion-activated cameras, voice recorders, door sensors. Nothing illegal, nothing fancy. Just commercially available devices anyone could order online. I'd planned logistics operations in war zones. Setting up a few cameras in a mansion was easy. I placed one near the front door, one in the living room bookshelf, one in the hallway outside my room, one near Becca's office desk. I labeled every feed on my laptop. Timestamps, storage backups, clean and organized, not for revenge, for documentation. The next week I became invisible. I made coffee, I cooked meals, I cleaned counters, I fed Becca's dog. I nodded when she spoke. I kept my tone flat and agreeable. No opinions, no pushback, no emotion. She loved it. One afternoon I overheard her on a call in the office. The audio came through my laptop feed. "Yes, the loan is under Cassidy Hayes," Becca said. "She's family," she agreed. Pause. "No, she doesn't need to be present. I handle her finances." Another pause. Yes, same social, same address." My fingers stilled on the keyboard. "Loan. In my name." I rewound. Listened again. Took notes. Later that night, she came home with 3 shopping bags from a luxury boutique. She tossed one at me. "Hold this while I try things on." Inside the bag was a receipt. $14,870, paid with funds from a new account, under my name. Over the next few days, the pattern became clear. Short-term loans, high interest, fast approval, all under Cassidy Hayes. All signed digitally, all traced to devices Becca used. She was stacking debt in my identity. When the payments came due, she planned to shrug and say her unstable veteran sister had done it. I copied every file, every timestamp, every IP address. Then Julian entered the picture. He visited often, always after business hours, always carrying stress like cologne. One night they sat in the living room drinking whiskey. I stayed in the kitchen quiet, listening through my feed. Julian loosened his tie. "Once we're married, your sister needs to go," he said. Becca sighed. "She'll be useful." Julian shook his head. "No. She's a liability. You told everyone she's unstable. If she snaps, it's on us." Becca smirked. "She won't snap. She's obedient." Julian leaned back. "After the wedding, I'll have my attorney arrange a placement. Cheap assisted living, somewhere quiet. We'll say it's for her well-being. With her history, no one will question it." My jaw stayed relaxed, my breathing steady. Inside, another note filed itself cleanly into place. They weren't just sabotaging my career. They were planning to remove me from public life completely. Julian continued. "And once she's settled, we'll handle whatever small inheritance she has left. Your parents are already on board. They need the cash." Becca laughed. "Mom cried a little, but she'll take the deal. She always does." I watched them clink glasses on the screen. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just 2 people casually planning to erase someone who lived in the same house. I saved the file, backed it up, encrypted it, uploaded a copy to cloud storage under a neutral name. Then I closed the laptop and went upstairs with a tray of tea. Becca looked up. "Oh my God, you're a lifesaver," she said. Julian smiled at me. "See, perfect arrangement." I placed the tray down. "Anything else you need?" I asked. Becca waved me off. "Nope. Go relax." I returned to the basement room, sat on the bed. No shaking hands, no spiraling thoughts, just a situation map. Identity theft, financial fraud, conspiracy to commit unlawful institutionalization, multiple witnesses, digital records, and 2 people who believed I was too broken to notice. The next morning, I received a notification. Another loan approval, another 5 figures, another signature bearing my name. I saved it, went upstairs, made breakfast, and smiled politely when Becca said, "You're really thriving here, Cass." I kept smiling and washing dishes, while my other life quietly came online. The law firm verified my identity within 48 hours. Video call, security questions, digital signatures, no ceremony, no fireworks, just paperwork moving across screens. At the end of the call, the senior partner adjusted his glasses. "Ms. Hayes, you now hold controlling interest in Vanguard Logistics. The board is prepared to follow your direction. How would you like to proceed?" I had already decided. "I want temporary executive authority under an alternate professional identity," I said. "I don't want my name appearing in public filings yet." He didn't look surprised. Wealthy families did stranger things. "Understood. We can register an executive appointment under a corporate alias. Many high-level acquisitions use confidentiality structures." "Name?" he asked. "Viper. A nickname from my service days. Short, sharp, forgettable. By the end of the week, Viper existed on paper. Executive clearance, CEO appointment authority, board voting rights, secure office access." Meanwhile, Cassidy Hayes was still scrubbing countertops in a mansion basement. Monday morning, I put on plain black slacks, a gray t-shirt, and sneakers. No makeup, hair tied back. I told Becca I was going to the grocery store. She waved from the couch. "Don't forget almond milk, and use my card." I walked out carrying her shopping bag. I didn't go to the grocery store. I drove downtown to Vanguard Logistics headquarters. The building was steel and glass 40 stories high, reflecting the cloudy Seattle sky. Employees moved through the lobby with ID badges and coffee cups, minds already in meetings. I entered through the service entrance the way cleaning crews did. No one questioned me. Uniforms create invisibility. I signed in as temporary maintenance support. A board security guard handed me a visitor badge. I walked into the lobby holding a mop bucket. No one looked twice. Upstairs, the executive floor waited for Viper. Down here, Cassidy blended into the marble. By 10 a.m., Julian Sterling's representative arrived. I knew because I had the internal meeting schedule pulled up on my phone. Sterling Capital, preliminary due diligence session, conference room 38B. I mopped the lobby slowly. A group entered through the revolving door. Julian in front, navy suit, white shirt, perfect tie. 2 associates behind him. A lawyer trailing with a leather portfolio. Julian spotted me near the reception desk. He paused, looked, smirked. "Well, look who leveled up," he said, loud enough for his associates to hear. I kept mopping. He stepped closer. "Cassidy," he said. "Didn't expect to see you here." I straightened slightly. Neutral face, quiet voice. "I work here." His laugh came quick, sharp. "Of course you do. I guess Becca was right. You always land on your feet." He gestured at the mop. "Literally." His associates chuckled politely. One avoided eye contact. The lawyer looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Julian leaned in slightly. "This," he said, "is exactly why discipline matters. Some people lead companies, some people clean them." I nodded once. "Yes, sir." That satisfied him. He patted my shoulder like I was a loyal dog. "Good luck, Cassidy. Keep hustling." He walked toward the elevator's confidence intact, unaware that the person approving his entire company's future sat 10 floors above him under another name. I returned to the service elevator and rode it up. On the 38th floor, a receptionist greeted me immediately. "Good morning, Ms. Viper. The board is waiting." I stepped into a private office with a view of the city. A long conference table. Leather chairs, water pitchers, notepads with the Vanguard logo. 7 board members stood as I entered. Respectful, professional. "Ms. Viper," the chairman said, "we're ready to begin Sterling Capital's due diligence review at your direction." I sat at the head of the table. "Let's proceed," I said. On the screen, financial reports appeared. Acquisition terms, proposed valuation, debt schedules, cash flow forecasts. Sterling Capital was asking for a lifeline. Their debt ratio was high, their liquidity was thin, their proposed merger depended entirely on Vanguard absorbing their liabilities, and someone had approved preliminary talks without realizing who held the voting power. I scanned the documents with calm precision. Military logistics had taught me to read supply chain charts under rocket fire. Corporate finance charts under air conditioning were easier. One board member leaned in. "Sterling Capital's CEO is Julian Sterling," he said. "We've scheduled direct negotiations this afternoon." "I'm aware," I replied. No one questioned my calm. At noon, Julian entered the conference room upstairs. This time, I was seated at the table when he walked in. He didn't recognize me immediately. Different clothes. Hair styled differently, posture straight, badge on the table reading VIPER. Chief Executive Officer Vanguard Logistics. Julian froze, just for half a second. Then his professional smile returned. "Ms. Viper," he said, extending his hand. "Pleasure to finally meet." I shook his hand firmly. "Mr. Sterling." He studied my face. Searching memory, searching context. He didn't find Cassidy the cleaner, because Cassidy had been invisible. Viper was not. We sat. Lawyers opened files. Assistants poured water. The room settled into corporate rhythm. Julian began his pitch. "Sterling Capital offers an exceptional opportunity for mutual growth," he said. "We believe this merger will position both our companies for global dominance." I let him speak, observed, collected, every sentence polished, every number optimistic, every projection dependent on Vanguard's stability. After 20 minutes, I asked a single question. "Mr. Sterling, could you clarify your personal authorization on recent debt instruments listed under auxiliary subsidiaries?" His lawyer blinked. Julian smiled. "Those are standard short-term facilities." "Under whose name?" I asked. He hesitated. "Just a fraction." The board noticed. The meeting continued, but something had shifted. Julian had walked into a room expecting an easy victory. Instead, he sat across from a woman he didn't recognize, controlling a company he thought he could swallow, asking questions he didn't want asked. And downstairs in a locked janitor's closet, a mop bucket sat beside a visitor badge that read, "Cassidy Hayes." Unused, forgotten, exactly where I wanted it. I walked back into Becca's mansion that evening carrying grocery bags, just like the obedient basement sister she believed she owned. She didn't look up from her phone. "You're late," she said. "Put the ice cream in the freezer." I did exactly that. No rush, no tension. Just another task completed. After dinner, she went upstairs to edit videos. Julian didn't come by that night, which gave me quiet hours and a full data pipeline. I opened my laptop, logged into Vanguard's secure executive portal. A forensic audit toolkit sat waiting licensed to the CEO's account. I wasn't looking for curiosity. I was looking for confirmation. Sterling Capital's financial records were now accessible to me, under due diligence authority. Every subsidiary, every offshore account, every transaction large enough to require internal sign-off. I filtered by irregular cash outflows, then by payment routing to foreign gaming hubs. Macau appeared 3 times in the first report, then 7, then 23, large transfers, late hours, shell corporations, circular movement, debt masking. Julian Sterling wasn't just running a stressed company, he was bleeding it. I pulled one transaction chain onto the screen, followed it step by step. Funds left Sterling Capital, passed through a marketing subsidiary, moved to an influencer agency, then exited to a private casino credit network, an influencer agency. I searched the agency name, Becca's management company, her influencer contracts, her brand deals, her consulting fees, all receiving money from Sterling Capital, all sending money onward. She wasn't just ruining my career, she was laundering his gambling debt. I copied the entire chain, saved it, time-stamped, locked. Then I opened the camera feeds from the house. Becca sat at her desk, headphones and talking to someone on speaker. He said the Macau balance is getting out of hand, she said. But don't worry, once the merger happens, it disappears into Vanguard's books. That's the whole point. Pause. I know, Julian, I know. Just keep your temper under control until after the wedding. Another pause. Yes, my sister is under control. She does what she's told. I watched her click send on an email. I zoomed in. The recipient line showed a Sterling Capital finance officer. The subject line read, Resmoothing Q3 obligations. I saved that too. Midnight passed. I kept working. Another folder caught my eye. Legal correspondence. Attached PDFs. Scanned contracts. One file name stood out. Hayes Family Agreement. I opened it. Typed signatures. My mother, my father, Julian Sterling. A 3-party agreement. Terms. In exchange for a lump sum payment, Wallace and Karen Hayes agreed to support the long-term institutional placement of Cassidy Hayes, under medical recommendation granting Julian Sterling and Becca Hayes decision authority over her care. I read it twice, no dramatics, no shaky hands, just a clear understanding of the kind of people I was dealing with. My parents had signed off on my removal, on paper, for cash, to save their house. I copied the file, saved it in 3 locations. Then I closed the laptop and sat still in the dark. No music swelling. No tears, no rage pacing, just facts lining up cleanly. Becca had destroyed my career prospects. She was stacking debt in my name. She was laundering Julian's gambling losses. My parents had agreed to have me committed. Julian planned to dispose of me after the wedding, and all of them believed I was docile, broke, and isolated. I checked the time, 2:17 a.m. I lay down on the bed, hands behind my head staring at the ceiling. The situation was no longer emotional. It was procedural, evidence collected, motives confirmed, financial leverage identified, legal violations documented. In the Army, we called this stage mission Clarity. The next morning, Becca knocked on my door. Cass, she said through the thin wood, I need you to run an errand today. Julian's suit needs picking up. Don't forget the card is in my purse. I opened the door. Yes, Becca. She smiled. You're a lifesaver. I nodded. Took the purse, left the house, and instead of heading to the tailor, I drove to Vanguard headquarters. Upstairs, the board was already waiting. I placed a folder on the conference table. Inside were printed transaction chains, email screenshots, contract copies, audit summaries. One board member flipped through the pages slowly. Another adjusted his glasses. The chairman looked at me carefully. Miss Viper, he said, are you informing us that Sterling Capital's leadership is engaged in financial fraud and money laundering? I folded my hands. Yes, I said. And I am recommending we terminate merger discussions immediately and prepare legal action. No one argued, no one hesitated. When power speaks in evidence instead of emotion, people listen. By the time I walked out of the building, legal teams were already drafting notices. Compliance officers were locking data rooms. Sterling Capital's access to Vanguard systems had been suspended. Across the city, Julian Sterling still believed he was days away from becoming a billionaire by marriage and merger. At the mansion, Becca still believed her sister was a dependent assistant waiting for instructions, and my parents still believed they had secured their future by selling mine. I returned to the house with the tailor's receipt in hand. Becca barely looked up when I placed it on the counter. "You're really reliable," she said. "I knew you'd find your place eventually." I smiled politely, because in this house, the quiet one was always underestimated, and I had no intention of correcting that assumption yet. I woke up before dawn and folded the maid uniform neatly on the bed. For the first time since moving into Becca's house, I didn't put it on. Instead, I opened the closet door and pulled out a garment bag I had hidden behind winter coats. Inside hung my army dress blues, clean, pressed, metals aligned, shoes polished to mirror shine. I dressed slowly. No rush, no hesitation, every button closed with muscle memory. Downstairs, the house was already buzzing. Hairstylists, makeup artists, wedding planners rushing in and out. Becca's voice floated over everything bright and commanding. When I walked into the kitchen, one stylist glanced at me, then quickly looked away. No one recognized the basement helper in uniform that belonged on a parade ground. Becca turned. Her smile faltered for a moment. "What are you wearing?" she asked. I poured myself a glass of water. "My formal clothes," I said. She laughed nervously. "You don't need to dress up today. Just stay out of the way. After the signing, we'll head to the ceremony venue." "The signing," I said. "Right." Julian walked in, adjusting his cufflinks. He stopped when he saw me. His eyes narrowed slightly, like he was trying to place a familiar face in a different setting. "You're Becca's sister," he said. "Didn't know you owned a uniform that fancy." "I earned it," I replied. He chuckled. "Well, today's a big day for real professionals. Try not to spill anything this time." Becca touched his arm. "She'll behave." I finished my water, set the glass down, walked out to the driveway. A black car waited. Not for them, for me. The driver opened the door without a word. I got in. No one in the house questioned it. Rich neighborhoods have a way of accepting cars they didn't order. 20 minutes later, I stepped into the Vanguard headquarters through the main entrance this time. Security greeted me by name. Executives nodded as I passed. No mop, no disguise, no invisibility. Upstairs, the boardroom had been prepared for the merger ceremony. 2 long tables, nameplates, microphones, press photographers waiting near the back wall, coffee, water, legal folders arranged with military precision. Sterling Capital's team arrived first, lawyers whispering, assistants carrying briefcases, Julian walking like a man about to be crowned. Becca entered beside him in a white designer dress, not yet her wedding gown, but close enough to signal ambition. She waved at the cameras. Influencer instinct. They took their seats. The room settled. Then the chairman of Vanguard stood. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "we are here to finalize a proposed merger between Vanguard Logistics and Sterling Capital. Before we proceed, our chief executive officer will address the room." Every head turned toward the door behind them. I stepped in, dress blues, metals catching light, shoes striking the marble floor with steady rhythm. For a moment, no one spoke. Becca's mouth opened. Julian stared. One of Sterling's lawyers whispered, "Who is that?" I walked to the head of the table and placed my hand on the chair, marked Viper, Chief Executive Officer, Vanguard Logistics. Becca's voice broke the silence. "Security," she shouted. "Get her out, she's unstable." 2 security officers stepped forward, then stopped when the Vanguard chairman raised his hand. "She is exactly where she belongs," he said. I pulled out my ID badge and placed it on the table. The officer stepped back. Julian swallowed. "This is a mistake," he said. "She's Cassidy Hayes," I said, majority shareholder of Vanguard Logistics, and the executive currently deciding whether your company survives. The room shifted, cameras lifted, phones came out. Lawyers sat straighter. Becca's voice trembled. "You're lying," I nodded toward the chairman. He slid a document across the table. Board-certified ownership records, trust transfer confirmation, legal stamps. Becca didn't look at the paper. Julian did. His face drained slowly like someone watching a bank account hit 0 in real time. I took my seat. "Mr. Sterling," I said, "before we discuss your merger proposal, there are matters of compliance I need addressed." I tapped a folder. Inside were audit reports, transaction logs, loan documents, identity fraud records, email transcripts. Julian's lawyer reached for the folder. I allowed it. He flipped through, faster, faster, then slower, realizing the depth. Julian cleared his throat. These are internal matters, not relevant to... They're relevant, I said, because Vanguard will not absorb criminal liability as part of any merger. Becca stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous, she snapped. She's my sister. She doesn't understand business. She's just doing this for attention. I turned to her. Becca, I said, you opened loans in my name without consent. You laundered funds through your influencer agency. You told lenders I authorized you to control my finances. Her eyes darted to Julian. He didn't look at her. One of Sterling's lawyers leaned in to whisper something to him. Julian's jaw clenched. I continued. And last month, you and Mr. Sterling discussed placing me into assisted living against my will to secure financial control. I have recordings of those conversations. Silence. Real silence this time. Not social silence. Not family silence. Legal silence. Julian's lawyer closed the folder carefully. Mr. Sterling, he said we need a private consultation. Julian didn't move, because he knew. The room knew. The cameras knew. This wasn't a merger ceremony anymore. This was a public unmasking. Becca's voice dropped low. Mom and Dad will fix this. I looked at her. They signed contracts selling me out, I said. Those contracts are in that folder too. She sat down slowly. The Vanguard chairman cleared his throat. Mr. Sterling, he said, given these disclosures, Vanguard Logistics is withdrawing from merger discussions immediately. He slid a prepared document forward. Termination of negotiations. Julian stared at it, then at me. You set me up, he said quietly. I kept my tone even. No, you underestimated me. Across the table, Sterling's legal team was already making phone calls. One assistant whispered urgently into her headset. Another typed rapid messages. The cameras kept clicking. Becca sat rigid, hands clenched, watching the life she had imagined flicker and distort in front of her. And I sat at the head of the table, posture straight, voice steady, giving the room no reason to doubt who held authority now. I remained seated while the room tried to decide what reality it now lived in. Julian's lawyer whispered urgently into his ear. Becca stared straight ahead, blinking too fast. Sterling Capital's associates quietly gathered their tablets and phones like soldiers retreating from a battlefield they didn't expect. The Vanguard chairman slid one more document across the table. Mr. Sterling, he said. This is a formal termination of merger proceedings, effective immediately. Julian didn't touch the paper. He looked at me instead. You can't do this, he said. We've invested months into this deal. I kept my voice level. You invested months trying to hide fraud inside someone else's balance sheet. His lawyer finally stood. Mr. Sterling, he said quietly. We need to leave. Now. But Julian's pride refused to exit gracefully. He turned to the room, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. This is an unfortunate misunderstanding, he announced. Sterling Capital will address these concerns privately with Vanguard's board. No, I said. Every head turned toward me again. This isn't private, I said. This is documented financial misconduct involving public stakeholders. Vanguard's compliance team is already forwarding the audit to federal regulators. One of Sterling's assistants gasped softly. Becca's nails dug into the armrest. Julian's lawyer placed a hand on his shoulder. Sir, he murmured, if we stay, it gets worse. Julian finally stood. He straightened his jacket, lifted his chin, tried to preserve dignity that had already expired. We're leaving, he said. Sterling Capital's delegation filed out of the room in stiff silence. Cameras followed, phones recorded. Word spread faster than any press release ever could. Becca didn't move. She sat frozen in a chair meant for someone else's victory. I turned to her. You're welcome to leave with him, I said. Her voice came out thin. This isn't over, I nodded. For you it is. She stood abruptly and stormed out. Heels striking the floor like gunshots that hit nothing. The room exhaled. The Vanguard chairman leaned slightly toward me. Ms. Hayes, he said, legal counsel is ready to proceed with criminal referrals if you authorize. Yes, I replied. No hesitation, no dramatics. Just a clean directive. Within minutes, the meeting shifted. Lawyers collecting evidence. Compliance officers preparing reports. Board members discussing public statements. Everything moving with practiced corporate efficiency. By noon, Sterling Capital's access to financial markets was frozen pending investigation. By 1 o'clock, regulators had opened a formal inquiry. By 2, Julian Sterling's accounts were under review. And by 3, my parents received a phone call they didn't expect. I didn't need to be present to know how it went. Their house mortgage, their secret agreement, their attempt to trade my freedom for cash, all now tied to a criminal investigation. But I still drove to see them. Old habits die hard. Confrontation feels cleaner in person. My father opened the door. He looked smaller than I remembered. My mother stood behind him wringing her hands. "Cassidy," my mother whispered. "We saw the news." I stepped inside. The living room smelled like dust and old decisions. The family photos still smiled from the walls, unaware of their expiration date. My father cleared his throat. "We can explain," he said. "You already did," I replied. "With your signatures." My mother's eyes filled. "We were desperate. So was I said. "But I didn't sell anyone to fix it." They didn't answer. A knock came at the door. 2 uniformed officers stood outside. "Wallace Hayes," one asked. "Karen Hayes." My parents stiffened. "We have questions regarding a financial fraud investigation connected to Sterling Capital and a contractual agreement involving your daughter." My father looked at me. My mother grabbed his arm. I stepped aside to let the officers enter. No raised voice, no revenge monologue, no dramatic reveal, just consequences arriving on schedule. While they spoke with the officers, I walked outside and sat on the porch steps. A neighbor peeked through a curtain. Someone slowed their car passing by. Suburban theater at work. I checked my phone. One new message from Vanguard's legal team. "Mr. Sterling has been detained for questioning. Evidence strong. Next steps proceeding." I replied with one word: understood. I put the phone away. Across town, Becca was watching her follower count drop by the minute as news outlets linked her influencer company to money laundering. Brands would pull contracts by sunset. Her curated life would implode without a single dramatic speech from me. Julian was sitting in an interrogation room, trying to negotiate a future that no longer obeyed him. My parents were explaining to officers why they signed a contract to institutionalize their own daughter. And I was sitting on a porch breathing calm air, watching leaves move in the wind. Not triumphant, not satisfied, just finished with pretending I was small. My work wasn't to destroy them. It was to step out of the role they built for me and let truth do the rest. And truth, once released, didn't need help swinging the hammer. I sat in my new office the following week, signing documents with a pen that cost more than my first month of rent had once been. No one called me Viper anymore. That identity had served its purpose. The board now addressed me as Ms. Hayes. No hesitation, no confusion, no hidden smirks. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Seattle moved like it always had. Cars, people, rain. A city that didn't care who won or lost inside glass towers. Inside, everything was quiet, efficient, clean. The legal updates arrived one after another. Julian Sterling had been formally charged with financial fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to launder money. His company's assets were frozen. His passport had been confiscated. His lawyer was already negotiating damage control that couldn't undo what was public now. Becca's influencer agency had collapsed within 48 hours. Sponsors terminated contracts. Platforms suspended accounts pending investigation. Her carefully filtered life dissolved faster than a story post. My parents had avoided prison but not consequence. They were under civil investigation. Their mortgage lender had called in the loan tied to the attempted payout agreement. The house they once guarded like a fortress now sat under foreclosure review. I didn't attend any court hearings. I didn't give interviews. I didn't post statements. Silence had always been their weapon. Now it was my boundary. One afternoon, my phone rang. "Unknown number," I answered. "Cassidy," my mother said. Her voice sounded smaller than the last time I saw her. "We lost the house," she said. "We're moving into an apartment." I didn't respond. "Becca, she wants to talk to you," my mother added. "She says she made mistakes." I looked at the city through the window. A ferry crossing the water. People living lives that had nothing to do with mine. "Tell her I wish her clarity," I said. "I don't offer roles in my life that harm me," my mother cried softly. "You're so cold." I kept my voice steady. "No, I'm finally warm to myself." I ended the call. Not angry, not vindictive. Just finished. A week later, I stood in a different building, smaller, brighter, no marble floors, no chandeliers, no power plays, a community center for veterans. Men and women sat around tables. Some filling out job applications, some learning budgeting, some just talking to people who understood what it meant to return to a world that didn't automatically make space for you. I shook hands, listened, took notes. Then I signed another document. The Cassidy Hayes Foundation for Veteran Financial Protection, a program designed to help former service members navigate civilian employment, protect against financial exploitation, and build independent stability. No pity campaigns, no charity marketing, just structure education and legal support. The director thanked me. Cameras flashed once, then left. No viral post, no dramatic reveal, just something real. Later I returned to Vanguard. My assistant handed me a folder. Quarterly report, she said. And a request from the board for your long-term vision. I nodded. Because legacy isn't built in a single victory. It's built in what you choose to grow afterward. That evening I stood by the office window lights of the city stretching below. No voiceover moment, no poetic metaphor. Just a woman who finally controlled her own name. I thought about the engagement party, the red wine, the laughter, the way they believed I was nothing without their permission. They were wrong. Not because I took them down, but because I never was what they said in the first place. I turned away from the window, picked up my coat, and left the office. Tomorrow would be work, decisions, growth, responsibility, a normal life, earned, not handed. And if you're listening to this, I'll leave you with one question. Have you ever been labeled as weak, useless, or disposable by people who benefited from keeping you small? And what would your life look like if you stopped believing them and started building anyway? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about quiet strength, real consequences, and people who refuse to stay in the roles assigned to them. I used to believe family was the one place you didn't need armor. Then I learned some families don't want you broken. They want you dependent. Not always out of cruelty, sometimes out of fear, sometimes out of greed, sometimes because controlling one person keeps the whole family structure comfortable. And the person chosen for that role is usually the one who learned early not to fight back. For years, I thought my situation was unusual, extreme, dramatic, something out of a bad daytime show. But after everything happened, veterans started reaching out. Employees from toxic workplaces, adult children from controlling households. And the pattern was the same. Different houses, same system. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Some families build their stability on one member staying small. Not dead, not gone, just small enough to manage. If you're the responsible one, they need you reliable. If you're the problem one, they need you dependent. If you're the helper, they need you available. Roles get assigned early, and once assigned, the system resists change. In my case, I was the one who left served, handled pressure, didn't complain. That made me the perfect emergency backup plan. If anything went wrong, I'd return home and absorb the impact quietly. That was fine when I didn't know better. It stopped being fine when I became aware. The first warning sign that your family profits from your weakness is simple. They discourage your independence while pretending to protect you. It sounds like you're not ready for that. The world is dangerous. Let us handle this for you. You'll just get overwhelmed. Sometimes they believe it, sometimes they don't. Either way, the outcome is the same. You stay dependent. They stay in control. The second warning sign. They control information that affects your life. Money, legal documents, medical decisions, employment references. In healthy families, transparency is normal. In controlling families, knowledge is rationed. Not because you're incapable, but because informed people are harder to manage. If someone consistently knows things about your life that you don't, that's not support. That's leverage. The third warning sign. They speak for you when you didn't ask them to, calling your employer, handling your finances, explaining your behavior to others, making decisions on your behalf. Even when done politely, it trains the world to see you as incapable. Over time, you start to believe it too. That's the most dangerous part. Because the real prison isn't the house. It's the story they teach you about yourself. I believed I was behind, unprepared, out of place, lucky to be tolerated. It wasn't true, but repetition makes lies feel like personality. The moment that changed everything wasn't the discovery of money or power. It was realizing I had accepted a version of myself written by people who needed me weak. Once you see that, you can't unsee it. Now here's the part no one likes to talk about. Breaking out of that role feels like betrayal at first. Your family will say you've changed. You're cold now. You think you're better than us. But what they really mean is, you're no longer controllable. Independence always looks like rebellion to people who benefit from your obedience. That doesn't mean every family disagreement is manipulation. Not every conflict is toxic. But if your growth is consistently punished, minimized, or sabotaged, that's not love. That's preservation of a system that needs you smaller than you are. So what do you do in real life, if any of this sounds familiar? Not dramatic confrontations, not social media exposés, not revenge fantasies. Practical steps. First, own your information. Know where your legal documents are. Birth certificate, ID, credit reports, medical records, employment records. If someone else has exclusive access to these, that's a red flag. Adults should have direct access to their own lives. Second, separate your finances, even if it's a small account, even if it's slow, even if it takes time. Financial independence is psychological independence. When you can pay for your own choices, you can make your own choices. Third, build relationships outside your family system. Friends, mentors, professional networks, communities. If your entire emotional world lives inside one family structure, leaving your assigned role feels like losing oxygen. Outside connections give perspective, and perspective breaks manipulation. Fourth, learn to trust your own assessment. If something feels off, it probably is. You don't need unanimous family approval to validate your reality. Agreement is not proof. Silence is not consent. And finally, you're allowed to outgrow the version of you that kept the peace. Some families will adjust, some won't. That part isn't under your control. What is under your control is whether you keep shrinking to preserve comfort for people who never planned to expand with you. I didn't lose a family, I lost a role, and gained a life. If you're listening and quietly thinking, this sounds familiar, then I'll leave you with one thought. You're not difficult. You're not dramatic. You're not broken. You're just starting to see clearly. And once you see clearly, the only real question is, what would your life look like if you stopped living in the version of yourself that someone else needed? People think power is loud. They think power is slamming doors, raising voices, demanding explanations, winning arguments in real time. For a long time, I believed that too. If you weren't fighting back, you were losing. But I learned something the hard way. Silence isn't weakness. Uncontrolled emotion is. Manipulative people don't fear your anger. They feed on it, they provoke it, they collect it. Because the moment you react emotionally, they stop being the one under scrutiny. You become the story. I didn't win by yelling. I didn't win by exposing. I didn't win by convincing anyone I was right. I won by not reacting while I gathered reality. That's what silence is when used correctly. Not surrender, not fear, strategy. There's a difference between being quiet because you're powerless and being quiet because you're observing. Most people never learn to tell the difference. They just assume the loudest person in the room holds control, but real control belongs to the person who chooses when to speak. In toxic environments, families, workplaces, relationships, there's an unspoken rule: the person who stays calm becomes the threat. Because calm people don't leak information. They don't expose their next move. They don't give you emotional leverage. That's why manipulators try so hard to get a reaction. They insult you, question your stability, push sensitive topics, mock your boundaries, not because they're confident, but because they need you off balance. Once I understood that, everything changed. I stopped explaining myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. I stopped defending my intentions to people who already decided my role. I stopped arguing facts with people who benefited from fiction. Instead, I watched, I listened, I documented. Silence became my way of saying, I'm not playing on your terms. This isn't about becoming cold or distant. It's about recognizing that not every moment deserves your emotional energy. Emotional energy is a limited resource. Spend it where it builds your life, not where it entertains someone else's dysfunction. A common mistake people make when they start recognizing manipulation is trying to expose it immediately. They call family meetings. They confront bosses in hallways. They demand apologies from people who never plan to take responsibility. And when that fails, they feel even more powerless. But confrontation only works when both sides are invested in truth. Manipulators aren't. They're invested in control. If truth threatens their control, they'll twist it, deny it, or bury it. Silence buys time. Time buys clarity. Clarity buys leverage. That's the part most self-help advice skips. They say speak your truth. They don't tell you to check whether the room is safe for truth first. Sometimes the smartest move is to say nothing while preparing everything. Silence also protects your nervous system. When you live under constant emotional provocation, your body stays in alert mode. Heart racing, thoughts looping, sleep disrupted, judgment clouded. That's when bad decisions happen. Loud decisions, permanent decisions. Quiet allows your brain to stay online. It lets you respond instead of react. And that difference, responding instead of reacting, is the difference between surviving a situation and shaping it. Now, silence isn't about disappearing. It's not about letting people walk over you. It's not about swallowing pain forever. It's about choosing the moment of action instead of being dragged into it. If any of this feels familiar, here are practical ways to apply controlled silence in real life. First, don't argue with someone who benefits from misunderstanding you. If they gain power, sympathy, money, or control from your weakness, no explanation will fix that. Save your breath, save your data. Second, don't reveal your plan to people who've proven they don't respect your boundaries. Not everyone deserves a preview of your next step. Privacy isn't deception, it's protection. Third, when emotions spike, pause. Not forever, just long enough to regain self-command. The person who can delay their reaction already has advantage. Fourth, observe patterns, not isolated incidents. One rude comment is a bad day. Repeated behavior is a strategy. Silence helps you see the pattern without getting distracted by each individual spark. And finally, silence is temporary. Action is permanent. You're not staying quiet to stay small. You're staying quiet to move precisely. There's a moment when silence ends. Not in an explosion, not in a dramatic confrontation, but in a simple, undeniable action that speaks louder than any argument ever could. A boundary enforced, a decision executed, a life redirected. That's when silence becomes proof of strength. So if you've ever been told that being quiet means you're weak, remember this. Weakness is reacting to every provocation. Strength is choosing when not to. And once you learn that difference, no one can drag you into a version of yourself you've already outgrown. For a long time, I thought winning meant making sure the people who hurt me regretted it. That's a natural instinct. Most of us feel it. If someone undermines you, lies about you, or profits from your pain, part of you wants to see the scales balance in real time. But here's what I learned. Revenge isn't the victory. Independence is. When you build a life that no one can confiscate, manipulate, or rewrite, you stop needing to prove anything to anyone. Their opinions lose gravity. Their schemes lose access. Their narratives stop mattering. That's the real endgame. Not destroying someone else's world. Constructing your own so solidly that no one else can live inside it without your consent. And that kind of life isn't built on motivation, quotes, or overnight transformations. It's built on structure. Quiet, boring, repeatable structure. There are 3 pillars to a life no one can take from you. The first is knowledge. Not just academic knowledge. Practical knowledge. Understanding how money works. Understanding how credit works. Understanding basic law. Understanding contracts before you sign them. Understanding what your name can legally be used for and how to protect it. Most people get exploited not because they're stupid, but because no one ever taught them these things. Families pass down recipes and traditions. They rarely pass down financial literacy. And when they do, it's often incomplete on purpose. Once you learn the mechanics of systems, you stop being at the mercy of people who hide inside them. The second pillar is documentation. This sounds unglamorous, but it's one of the most powerful tools you can have. Keep your own copies of important documents. Know where your records are stored. Check your credit report. Track your financial activity. Save communication when something feels off. Manipulation thrives in ambiguity. Documentation kills ambiguity. When reality is written down, time-stamped, and stored outside of anyone's emotional narrative, truth becomes durable. You don't need to be paranoid, just organized. The third pillar is self-generated stability. Income that doesn't depend on one person's goodwill. Skills that transfer across industries. Connections that don't all come from the same social circle. A sense of identity not built solely on one role. When your entire life is tied to one gatekeeper, one boss, one partner, one family system, your autonomy is fragile. When your stability comes from multiple sources, you become hard to corner. This doesn't mean becoming isolated. It means becoming resilient. Now let's talk about a mistake many people make. They think independence means doing everything alone. It doesn't. It means choosing your alliances instead of inheriting them. It means asking for help from professionals instead of surrendering control to unqualified relatives. It means building networks based on respect, not obligation. There's a big difference between support and control. Support helps you grow. Control keeps you small. Once you feel that difference, you stop confusing love with compliance. Another truth that matters: you don't need to cut everyone off dramatically to be free. Sometimes freedom is quiet distance. Shorter calls, less disclosure, stronger boundaries, neutral responses. Not every separation has to be a war. Some just need clarity. And sometimes, yes, the healthiest choice is walking away completely, not out of spite, out of self-respect. Here's the part people rarely say out loud. When you change your life structure, your identity changes. And some people will miss the old version of you, not because they loved you more then, but because they benefited from you more then. That loss is theirs to process, not yours to fix. Your responsibility is to the version of you who finally saw the truth and decided not to unsee it. If there's one thing I want you to take from everything you've heard, it's this: you don't have to become hard. You just have to become clear. Clear about what you tolerate. Clear about what you sign. Clear about who speaks for you. Clear about what stories about you are allowed to circulate in your presence. Clarity is quiet power. And once you have it, you don't need revenge. You don't need drama. You don't need to show them. You just need to live in a way that makes their version of you irrelevant. So I'll leave you with a final question to carry forward. If you stripped away every role other people assigned to you, the helper, the disappointment, the dependent, the problem, who would you choose to be, and what small step could you take today to start building that life?
Final note: this story is a work of fiction created by artificial intelligence to heighten drama and emotion. But the valuable lessons we discuss are entirely real and continue to happen to many people every day. If this style isn't for you, that's perfectly okay. Please feel free to look for other content that better suits your needs.